Good day, my name is Ajayi Olasupo, and on behalf of the authors, I'll be presenting this paper titled A Workflow System for Managing Ethical Clearance in Research Work. An ethical clearance is, most research work requires ethical clearances, and an ethical clearance ensures that the research is conducted in a responsible and ethically accountable manner. However, despite their importance, ethical clearance currently are manual, laborious, and lengthy. By lengthy, we mean that they can take an average of between a year and 2 years in worst case. By this time, the researcher has probably given up or has lost interest in the research work, or the funding organization has pulled out their funds, or some other process, and as such, the research in itself either is most of the time abandoned. Ethical clearance application processes usually involve a number of iterations. Different people have to sign different documents, and they're usually paper-based. One of the major challenges of ethical clearances currently in place is that the ethical clearance committee usually have fixed meeting days. By this, we mean that sometimes the meeting could be once every 3 months or once every 6 months. And by this, so each applicant usually has to wait for this duration of time before getting a feedback on their application, their ethical application. And one of the major challenges is that there is no way to track ethical clearance in real time, to track the progress of ethical clearance in real time. So in order to mitigate or to address these challenges, we propose a solution to reduce the ethical clearance application process. We do this by digitizing the entire process and develop a workflow system that incorporates all stakeholders in the system, able to track application status in real time, and then including a notification and reminder system. Now, when we say stakeholders, we are going to use the University of Western Cape as a case study, and the stakeholders in this case would be the applicants. Of course, this is the individual who is making the application himself, making the ethical clearance application. Then there is the supervisor. This is optional because if the applicant is a student, then he will have a supervisor. However, if the applicant is not a student, it's a staff or some other member of the university committee, he may not necessarily have a supervisor, hence why we make this optional. However, the role of the supervisor is to review ethical clearance applications and approve or send back for corrections where necessary. Once approved, it is sent to the research committee officer or the RCO, who also reviews and ensures that all documents and requirements are filled before forwarding to the HOD or the head of department. The head of department does something similar, reviews the application, and then forwards it to the ethical clearance committee, from where it is approved or declined, as the case may be. Now, this is the busy process. This shows the sequence diagram of the ethical clearance process, and it starts with the applicants. This applicant, one major thing we also notice about ethical clearance applications is that people usually fill the wrong form. So and they might not get a feedback or as to this. They may not get a feedback of this until about 6 months down the line. Say, for example, an individual fills an ethical clearance form for the humanities-related project, instead of animal-related project. And this, again, remember the committee only has a meeting once every 3 months or once every 6 months. So this individual doesn't get a feedback or doesn't know about this until about 6 months time, and then have to start the whole project process again. At the 7th month. So the system, when the applicant initiates the ethical clearance request system, it fills some pre-forms, and then the system sends the appropriate form for the individual. That's the feedback in the dashed line, sorry. And then the applicant then, of course, fills the form and then submits it. And once submitted, one key thing about the system is the feedback system. One key feature of our system is the feedback system. So once submission has been made, the system forwards it to the supervisor for approval and sends the notification to the applicant, telling the applicant that the application has been forwarded to the next person on the chain. This supervisor also does the review and then sends back the approval. If however, after a preset number of time or days, the supervisor has not approved, the system automatically sends a reminder. The system automatically sends a reminder to the individual who is holding up the application process. Then he completes his process and then sends back to the applicants. If there are corrections, the system forwards it back to the applicant for the correction to be made. The applicant then makes the necessary correction and then resubmits the process. So there's a loop going on here of review and resubmission until the supervisor is satisfied. Then it forwards it to the next individual, which is the RCO on the workflows chain. The same process is repeated. Once the RCO receives it, the system sends the supervisor a notification and also sends the applicant a notification of the submission. Again, reminders are also sent if the RCO is taking too long. So this process is continued along the chain, down the chain for the RCO, the HOD, and the ethics committee. Finally, the process is sent back to the applicant when the final approval has been received. Here we illustrate the very same thing, where the applicant's application is stored in the database, and then is forwarded to the supervisor. The supervisor approves or disapproves, depending, and then forwards it down the line to the necessary to the RCO. The RCO also does the same thing, approves or disapproves, and forwards it down the line. One key thing that we're trying to incorporate here is the tracking of application status. At each point, the applicant can track the system, can query the system to determine where the current application process is. This isn't just limited to the applicants. As the supervisor, the RCO, the HOD, and anyone down the line can also actively inquire of the system to know the status of the application process. So here we do some form of sketch work of what we intend to do. The proposed system is going to be web-based and as such access through a web browser. The student logs in with his details as required and then fills in the ethical clearance form. Basically introduction, and then based on what he fills into this introduction aspect, the necessary type of ethical form is returned to the student. The student fills what is required and then makes a submission. Once submitted, the system is sent it to the RCO or the next individual down the chain. And then the student, this is the query part where he's able to check in real time as to where the status of the application is. So in this case, we just shown a very quick status where it shows that the status is pending and is awaiting approval from the HOD. So the system is able to give precise information as to with whom the application is. And then it says it was submitted for approval on the 15th of June. And these are just example dates. And then the next reminder will be sent on the 27th of June, for instance. Now, this is the assessor or the approval, the other side, the other stakeholders, that is every other individual apart from the student, is what they see. This is a set of applications or applicants that are waiting for their approval. And reminders are sent at preset intervals, say weekly, bi-weekly, fortnightly, etc. And then so you can view each one, the application he wants to review, approves it if necessary, or send back for correction. And then so this is what the student will receive once it's been approved. Once the entire process has been approved, the students receive the ethical clearance approved, download the certificate below. So we try to ensure that this process is just in 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. In 3 steps, we try to simplify the whole process and make it as easy to follow and as easy to complete as possible. So these are our SketchUps or our framework. In terms of actual implementation, we try to implement it. We did an actual implementation, a prototype of the system. Here, the student is able to fill in the pre-form as required in terms of necessary details, and then is able to track in real time. So we just took some snapshots of the system. We're not going to want to show you through the whole system, just some of the snapshots, relevant snapshots. This is student application form place, and this is where the student is able to track the status of his or her application, ethical clearance application process. Similarly, on the flip side, we have these are the other stakeholders. For the purpose of this presentation, we just chose the supervisor. It could be the HOD, it could be the RCO, it could be any other individual apart from the student. And of course, this is the sign-in page, the login page, and then they're able to view a number of applications this application viewer page, and then they're able to choose the application they want to, and then make necessary, then do the necessary review. The review process will look something similar to this, where he reads through the individual, reads through the ethical application process or submitted data, and then he looks at based on some simple, we try to make it a very simple process of just check boxes and ticks and crosses. So if the things are required, for instance, as the researcher provided the necessary information, does the study harm the environment in any way, are the documents required submitted, etc. So just about a check and crosses if they are not. Then finally it does a simple approve or reject, as the case may be. So this is basically what our system is and what the proposed system is. And in this work we've been able to, so we've identified that they identify some of the causes or delays in ethical clearance application processes, some of which we have discussed earlier on, and we have digitized the process. We proposed a system that digitized, wherein the system is digitized, and then developed a prototype web-based workflow system for ethical clearance. This is a prototype and is not fully completed. However, we've been able to test for functionality and acceptability from what we have thus far, and we've got a number of feedback from the various stakeholders, some of which we are currently working on and would implement in the next iteration. So in the future work, we seek to fully implement the system. Like we said, it's currently a prototype and some functionalities have not been added, but based on the feedback we've got from the users, including things like there are some areas where, including the application form itself, the types of ethical clearance, the component, what should be there and what shouldn't be there. We also got some feedback relating to the user interface and user experience, which will also to be addressed in the future version of the work. Finally, one key thing we seek to do in future is, once the system has been completed and has already been used, we want to seek to validate the efficiency of our system by comparing it to the manual-based process currently in operation. This would help us know how effective our system is in terms of how long, if its ability to actually cut down the ethical application process, as well as improve the overall functionality of the system. So this is our system, and thank you for listening. Again, my name is Ajayi Olasupo, and on behalf of the other authors, I really want to thank you for your attention.